So let's also take a look at another situation here with Eastern Orthodoxy, briefly shifting gears. And let me remind all of y'all who are just now tuning in and joining the live stream, hit the subscribe button and the like button. So let's take a look at an article here from Union of Orthodox Journalists. One second. Union of Orthodox Journalists, an article that they just posted. Cypriot Synod, so Cyprus, the Synod of the bishops of Cyprus, deposed bishop following letter from Patriarch Bartholomew of Constantinople. And here's the bishop that was deposed. The ecumenical patriarch demanded disciplinary action against the Cypriot hierarch who insisted on rebaptizing Protestants, converting to Eastern Orthodoxy. So in Eastern Orthodoxy, there's different perspectives. This is a controversy that goes back to the 3rd century between Pope Stephen and Cyprian. And there was a lot of back and forth. There were different practices. North African bishops and Cyprian were rebaptizing people. And Pope Stephen was like, no, you can't do that. And the African bishops were saying, but we have an apostolic practice that lets us do this. And Stephen's like, no, that's wrong. And I've spoken and I have the keys and I'm the Pope. So y'all need to listen to me. And so there was a big controversy there. Of course, in the Catholic Church, what won the day was Stephen's position. So people are not rebaptized, so if you have somebody who's baptized and then they go astray when they come back to the church, they're not rebaptized. Or if they're baptized in a different community and then come into the Catholic Church, they're not rebaptized as long as it was a valid baptism. For Eastern Orthodox, there's different practices. They will reconfirm you. They will repeat that sacrament. All of them. So if you're a confirmed and baptized Catholic, they'll repeat your confirmation if you're going to be received into the Eastern Orthodox Church from Catholicism. Some of them will also rebaptize you. It just kind of depends on who you're talking to, which Orthodox jurisdiction it is. Different bishops, different patriarchs, different synods, they have different practices. So some of them will accept your baptism as a Protestant or as a Catholic. None of them will accept your confirmation, though. They'll always repeat that. But baptism, they may or may not accept it. There's been a big debate here in Eastern Orthodoxy on the question. There have been different practices in Eastern Orthodoxy on the question. Usually they would not rebaptize Catholics or even Protestants, but there has been a big push on part of some Orthodox to do that. And it's become such an issue and a divisive issue. Some of Orthodox would try to downplay it and say it's not that big of a deal, but if you talk to actual Eastern Orthodox behind closed doors, they'll tell you this is a big deal. I remember seeing a video from Metropolitan who's I actually had the honor of interviewing before he passed away. And he said in an interview he was hoping that the Holy and Great Council of Crete, I think that was 2018, would fix this, would resolve the issue. But of course, it never did so. Now, the thing here is Metropolitan was hoping that the Holy and Great Council would deal with it, because this council was about 100 years in the making. And so pretty much all of the big controversies in Eastern Orthodoxy, for a good 100 or so years, people were hoping this council, whenever it actually is convoked, would address all of the problems in Eastern Orthodoxy. Well, almost none of the problems were addressed, let alone resolved from it. But one of them was the rebaptism situation. And so, for better or worse, it wasn't addressed. It continues to be a hotly debated topic in Eastern Orthodoxy. With that in mind, it says the removal of Metropolitan Tsikos of Paphos came after direct intervention by Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, who in a letter to Archbishop George of Cyprus demanded that the disobedient bishop be brought to order. This was reported by the Cypriot outlet Philonews, which published relevant documents. A central point of conflict was the Metropolitan's firm stance on rebaptizing issues who had been previously baptized in Protestant denominations. And usually what they'll do is they'll cite various canons from the early church for this. There are different canons that they hold to, some that allow for rebaptism, some that don't. And there's different ways in which they try to explain that. The Patriarch of Constantinople considers this an archaic practice, maintaining that chrismation or confirmation is sufficient for receiving Protestants into the Orthodox Church. I think that just pushes the problem one step further, one step down the road, because the same reason why you wouldn't rebaptize people is the same reason why you shouldn't reconfirm people. But all of them will reconfirm you. So there's still going to be a problem with repeating of sacraments no matter where you go in Eastern Orthodoxy. But some will receive your baptism and not treat you as a pagan when you enter the church. Others will not accept your baptism if you convert from Protestantism to Catholicism to Eastern Orthodoxy. They will treat you as a pagan, an unbaptized pagan, and they will baptize you, and they will say that's your first baptism. Okay. So Phil News published a complaint from an American professor of Cypriot origin who was unable to get married in Paphos due to conflicting practices between the Ecumenical Patriarch and the Metropolitan of Paphos regarding the reception of non-Orthodox Christians. The Protestant bride had received chrismation at the Church of St. Spiridon in the New York under the Ecumenical Patriarchate. After 9 months of catechesis had been given an Orthodox name. However, the Paphos Metropolitan deemed chrismation insufficient and insisted on full baptism. After about 9 months of catechism, a wife received an Orthodox name and underwent chrismation, the professor wrote in his complaint. A copy of the chrismation certificate was sent to the Paphos Metropolis, but when the couple tried to register for a church wedding in Cyprus, they were told that full baptism would be required. So don't let Eastern Orthodox lie to you. There are some people who will lie to you and just will tell you that this is no big deal in the Eastern Orthodoxy. You won't be denied any of the sacraments. That's just not true. I know Eastern Orthodox priests who have been denied sacraments, who are not allowed to concelebrate. I know plenty of people who are denied sacraments. Here's another example. Again, don't let people downplay this. By the way, somebody in the chat is saying the title is a clickbait. That is not true, and I encourage you to Google what clickbait means. I suspect you don't know the proper definition. The situation became even more complicated because all wedding arrangements had already been made. The banquet hall was reserved and paid for. Invitations sent and a certificate of singleness obtained from the parish of the Three Hierarchs in Chicago. When the professor spoke with the Paphos Metropolitan by phone, he was told that Metropolitan Tychikos wished to meet his wife in person. Upon learning that she was not in Cyprus, the professor was referred to another priest who told him Protestants do not have valid sacraments, so their baptisms are invalid. Again, some Orthodox are going to say they believe that to be the case. Others are going to say, no, their baptisms are valid, and so you don't have to repeat those. Also, whether or not you have to repeat your marriage vows, kind of a different question. Whether or not they'll accept your marriage, or if they think that you're living in adultery, different question. The professor filed complaints with the Archdiocese of the Ecumenical Patriarch in New York and the Metropolis of Chicago, where the rebaptism requirement was deemed unjustified. The matter eventually reached the Ecumenical Patriarch, who sent a strong protest to Archbishop George of Cyprus. Again, I got to give it to the Eastern Orthodox. Hate them or love them, right or wrong, at least they're willing to do some discipline. Gosh, I have not seen, analogous discipline being done in a long time in the Catholic Church. So again, right or wrong, hate them or love them, at least they're willing to do some serious discipline in situations like this. It says in it, the Patriarch expressed astonishment and indignation, calling Metropolitan Tychikos, however you pronounce it, views conservative and entirely outdated. He also noted that the Metropolitan spoke disrespectfully and inappropriately about the Reverend Ecumenical Throne. Not uncommon. I remember within the Patriarchate of Constantinople, when I was Eastern Orthodox, plenty of Greek Orthodox were saying that Patriarch Bartholomew is a heretic, kind of like you have a lot of Catholics saying, Francis is a heretic and stuff like that. That was very common in Eastern Orthodoxy as well. The Patriarch further warned that such incidents contribute to isolationism and jeopardize our sensitive relations with other Christian denominations and churches. Well, yeah, if you consider them unbaptized pagans, I'm certain that will impact discussions with that group, right? Your beatitude, convinced as we are here at the Phanar that the traditional relations between our sisters churches must continue as before, because Patriarch of Constantinople is really big into ecumenism. For the common good, something we are sure you and your holy brothers desire, we ask you to bring Metropolitan Tychicus to order and forbid him from disrupting the exemplary relations between the ancient churches of Constantinople and Cyprus, the latter state. Reporting the situation to the Holy Synod, Archbishop George remarked, because of this complaint, we have been discredited before the Orthodox Church in America and American governmental authorities. As previously reported by the Union of Orthodox Journalists, the Holy Synod and the Church of Cyprus has removed the Metropolitan from the administration of the Metropolis of Paphos. So he has been removed from ministry for rebaptizing and requiring the rebaptism of Protestants. Contrast this with someone like Father Peter Ayres, who very openly advocates for rebaptism position. In fact, I remember contacting him when I was looking into converting to Eastern Orthodoxy, and he told me that, I would need to be rebaptized. And I said, so, hey, if I go to the local Greek Orthodox church and they just receive me by chrismation and accept my baptism, would I not be considered Orthodox? And he didn't seem to think I would be considered Orthodox. And he told me that I need to drive 8 hours to the closest Russian church that would rebaptize me, which of course I didn't do, but this was a position that he advised me. And it appears that he advises people to be rebaptized, as in this particular case. So contrast Patriarch of Constantinople with, for instance, this from, again, very popular online priest, Father Peter Ayres.
Infant baptized by Catholic, grew up Protestant. Do I need to be baptized to become a member of the Orthodox Church? Pardon my ignorance. Hey, Brian, thank you.
All right, skipping forward past the rambling. Here we go.
But I think it would be really good if you read the literature we've produced on this. It's a massive book of 450 pages. Maybe that's too big for you, but there's also a pamphlet on reception and on being baptized into the church. And so the answer, as you would expect, is that you need to be baptized. And why do you need to be baptized? Because
all right, so he goes on to explain why, but very clearly he's telling Catholics, or even now in this case, somebody who was baptized a Catholic but then lived as a Protestant, tells them, yes, you need to be baptized. So in other words, this is an unbaptized pagan in his eyes. So Catholics are not really even, they're not even Christian. They're unbaptized pagans from this mentality. Whereas other Orthodox would not see Catholics or even Protestants in that way, and they would see them as baptized Christians, but maybe lacking full communion with the Orthodox Church, kind of borrowing from the language of Catholicism and the notion of full versus partial communion. So this is a pretty big deal. Again, within Eastern Orthodoxy. And again, a lot of people just try to downplay it. But as you can see here, it's big enough of a deal for a bishop to be removed. So the next time somebody tells you online it's not a big deal, you could just point to their own synods that are starting to depose some of these people, and their own bishops who are starting to speak out against this, even in the United States. I remember there was a letter by a noteworthy bishop in the United States who said Father Peter Ayres is wrong on this and censured him, and wrote a letter to his flock against Father Peter Ayres, because Father Peter Ayres is kind of spearheading this rebaptism view. Not that he understands it as rebaptism. He thinks that it's not rebaptism, that this person is being baptized for the first time. But for anybody who has a correct understanding of the sacraments, this would be rebaptism. So again, huge controversy going on here, but I have to at least give it to the Orthodox for saying, you know what, we're actually going to stand up and do something about this, and we're going to start deposing people who take this deviant practice. So maybe we'll see more from the Orthodox on that matter, and they'll start to rein in some of these people. Anyways, hope you found this helpful, productive. If you did, let me know. Put your thoughts there in the comment section. Please hit that like button. and the subscribe button. I would really appreciate your support. That's going to do it for today. I will see you all tomorrow. God bless.